Hello, my name is Sigurd Melin and I am CEO of NOAQ Flood Protection AB, a Swedish company that is dedicated to develop products for flood fighting. Me and my colleagues Thomas, Ann and Robert were participating in the Flood Expo 2019, but for obvious reasons we're not able to go this year, so we stay home in Sweden and communicate with you this way instead. You may very well ask questions and we will be happy to answer them during the session or maybe after if we don't have enough speed. As an inventor, I engaged myself in this area of flooding and flood fighting back in the 1990s. I saw on the news broadcast from northern Sweden how they were fighting floods with sandbags, piling sandbags to big barriers, and that was very hard work to do that. So I thought it must be some easy way to do this, and I started to investigate it and found out that there were no other way back in the 1990s. This was in 1993. As an inventor, I couldn't resist the challenge to try to find a better solution than this heavy work. And in the end, I found out that there was a solution, and that became what was known as the tube wall. I also realized that when I had made this invention, that there were no companies selling flood fighting products on the market, neither in Sweden nor internationally. So the next step was to start a company for this purpose, and that became NOAQ. And now, a number of years later, NOAQ is a well-established company. We are selling our products worldwide, and we have distributors in some 30+ countries. During the years, we have seen a number of other companies popping up and new products appearing. So now there are about maybe 25 or 30 temporary flood barriers on the market. Now, what is a temporary flood barrier? I prefer to take it literally. It's a barrier that is put up when the flood water is approaching, and after the flood you take it away. It's temporary in opposite to permanent barrier, which cannot be removed or built up. Built up they can be, but not removed afterwards. They are there all the time. It's a little bit confusion when we're talking about these different definitions. So a temporary flood barrier is not permanent, and it can be in turn divided in two categories. One is temporary barriers that need preparations to be done in advance, like making fasteners in the ground and so on. And those are in fact temporary, but if you have as such to protect your house, your neighbor cannot use the same device because they have not made these preparations. The other temporary flood barrier category is what I call freestanding, because they don't need any preparations. You just need a street or a lawn or a parking place or whatever, a free strip of land where you can put the barrier. And they don't need any support from behind or some fasteners and so on. So the first category is usually or often in Britain called demountable, but I used to call it instead site-bound, as it is bound to a certain site, in opposite to the freestanding barriers, which can be freely moved to wherever they are needed. And this is also the reason why we have engaged in the freestanding barrier category, because we see the big advantage with the freestanding barriers, as you can have them in stock somewhere and you can bring them to an area where a flooding is occurring and you can use them there, and the next time you can use it on some other place. And you don't need to make any preparations. Most people are unprepared, but what most people have is a lawn or a street or some open area in front of their house where you can put up the barrier to protect your house. But there is more to this. Water is heavy, and that means that a barrier needs to be very heavy to withstand the force, the horizontal force of the water. And that is why we've been using sand and sandbags for so long. But water is also heavy. 1 cubic meter of water has a weight of 1 ton, and in a flood situation we have tens or hundreds of thousands of tons of water coming to the site by the help of Mother Nature herself, without having to transport them. Couldn't we use that water, that weight, to ballast the barrier instead of bringing that sand to the site? So that was the idea behind what would become the tube wall, the first product that NOAQ launched. Also, by utilizing the own weight of the flood water, we could make the barrier instead very lightweight. We were able to reduce the weight of the barrier, and that meant that the speed of deployment was much faster than with sandbags, and less people were engaged in the work. So what we achieved was increased efficiency in building barriers. We could build barrier faster with fewer people. And this means also, of course, in the future that if we can engage more people who are not very strong superheroes, they are ordinary people, they can carry the device themselves and they can protect their own homes. Even the children can participate because the stuff are not very, very heavy. That would make it possible to create a more flood-resilient society. Hereby, we were able to make the world's first self-anchoring, temporary, freestanding flood barrier. And that is our specialty, and that is what we are keeping on developing. The tube wall consists of a number of tubes that are connected to one another in a row. And along each tube there is a skirt, we call it a skirt, that is lying on the ground in front of the tube. It's fused to the tube itself. And when the water enters the skirt, it weighs down the skirt and anchors it against the ground, hereby anchoring also the tube. You know, if you have tried to pull the children's pool on a lawn, that it is very heavy, even if you have just a little water. And here we have, for a 1 meter high tube wall, we have 1 ton of water on each square meter of the skirt. So this works very well. As the skirt is taking care of the anchoring, the tubes of the tube wall can be very light, so you don't need to fill them with something heavy. We were discussing having helium inside because it's light enough, but it's too expensive, so we ended up with having air inside. So the tube wall is air-filled. But we wanted to develop this idea further and to make a barrier that was even easier to use, with the components smaller. And that led to the next product, which is called the box wall. And the box wall uses the same principle, but it is filled with nothing at all. And that is the product that we are now continuing to develop, and that is a piece of the box wall that I have in front of me. First, we developed a 50 centimeter high version of the box wall called BW52. As these boxes are very light, the speed of deployment is very high. But exactly how fast was it to deploy a 100 meter long barrier? We decided to make a test, which we converted into a challenge. How fast can anyone build a 100 meter long barrier of a mobile flood barrier? Recently, we also developed this 1 meter high box wall called BW102. But before we launched it, we would like to make a test to verify that it could stand not only calm water, but also the dynamic forces of fast flowing water. So we made a test in a spillway near to a hydroelectric power plant nearby.
Thank you, Sigurd. Hello, my name is Thomas Brunzell and I'm the sales manager on NOAQ. I will talk a little bit about our different components that we have in the system, the flood fighting system that we call it. We have the corner boxes, outward and inward corners. We also have gables. And the gables can be connected to either a wall or they can be put together and you can climb like a curbstone or a staircase if you want to. All our components have a couple of features that are the same on every of them. For example, underneath, all our components have a sealing strip that seals towards the ground. They also have these friction soles. And of course, all of them have the locking mechanism. You have a toe side and you have the locking side on the top. This means that all these components can be connected together. So if you take the outward corner, you put the toe side in, you put the heel in, you tilt it a little bit, and then you just connect it. If you then take an outward corner, same principle, the toe side in, the heel down, tilt it a little bit, and connect it. With these different components, you have the straight one, the corners, you can zigzag through the landscape and avoid things like poles, stones and other things. So you just create your own barrier in the way that you like it. Another good thing with the box wall is that when you store them, you actually store them standing on the side. And they are actually connecting into each other. So a pile of box walls will not take so much space in your storage room. This also means that the box wall is very easy to transport. One 40-foot container can hold roughly 1 kilometer of barrier. And as you can see, it's very lightweighted. It's very easy to carry around. Everybody can build a barrier with our products. As a comparison with sandbags, one of these straight elements will replace 40 to 50 sandbags. So that's a lot. The box wall can be used either when you have still water coming up towards your house, or you can use it in a flash flood situation where you have heavy rain and the rain is coming down the street and you need to divert it to any place. And the same, of course, is with our BB102. Just to say a little bit about this, the BB102 that replaces 140 to 150 sandbags. So the weight loss is enormous. I rather carry one of these than 140 sandbags. Over to you, Sigurd.
We believe that most homes can be protected by temporary barriers, freestanding barriers like this one. And of course, you don't need to make any preparations if you have a street outside your house and a lawn where you can put the boxes, but there is a good idea to prepare yourself for using this kind of device to protect yourself. So we have put together some advice, and the first one is to find out from where will the water come when there is a flood threatening your home. Is it coming from below, from a river that has jumped its banks, or from a lake? Or does it come from above, from a hill running down the hillside? So first you need to know from where the threat comes. And then try to figure out where to put this barrier should this happen. What you need is a free strip of land with no obstacles, no trees, nor no fences and so on. Most often you will have such a free strip of land, but There may be some obstacles that need to be removed to allow a barrier to be placed. You may also need to involve your neighbors if the houses are very close together. The third advice is to also check what is under the ground. Most homes have pipes or drainage that goes from the house, from the garden out to the river or to the public system. And in a flood situation, water can come the other way around, going into your house and into your garden. So you need to be prepared to block those, and for that you need to know where they are. And the fourth advice, which is of course also important, is that you need to know from where you can get the device should a flood be imminent. Either you buy the stuff yourself and have it in your home, or you have some kind of agreement with a rental company that they have the stuff ready for you in a certain amount, so you can go and get it. Put it on the trailer behind your car and take it home. So find out what kind of equipment you need, what volumes you need, and where to get it from. So these are the four advice that I would like to spread. There are also other things that you may need in a flood situation, of course, and one thing is pumps. Even if you have a barrier, there will always be water on the wrong side of the barrier. No barrier is 100% leak-proof. You will have water coming through the ground, through the holes of rodents or whatever, and appear in your garden. And this water needs to be pumped over the barrier to the flooded side of the barrier. Also, if it's raining, it will rain behind the barriers, and brooks that come to your property on their way to the river, that water needs to be pumped over the barrier to the river or to the lake. So pumps are always a must, and you need to have a pump also in place even if you have a barrier. And maybe also, dependent on where you live, you may need to have a generator to feed the pump with electricity if there should be any power outages connected to the situation. Finally, I would like to ask Ann to come on stage, board member and responsible for the economy in this company. Please come forward.
Our vision. NOAQ has the ambition to build up an entire system of products for efficient flood fighting. What these products shall have in common is that they should be designed to suit ordinary people. They should be lightweight and easy to use. This way we will be able to make it possible for ordinary people to save themselves and their own property, especially as society does not have enough resources to help everyone. But also, if this becomes a reality, we can relieve the authorities, hereby allowing them to concentrate their efforts on helping those who cannot help themselves, on keeping roads open and protecting public infrastructure in general. The new self-anchoring freestanding flood barrier technology may in fact become a real game changer. It will allow many more people to engage in the flood fighting activities and make a real difference. In the end, we will get a more flood resilient society.